Cyber Threat Brief for April 14, 2026. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added 7 actively exploited vulnerabilities to the KEV, Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog, including a 14-year-old Microsoft VBA flaw and an Adobe zero-day exploited since December. Interlock Ransomware used a Cisco FMC zero-day to breach enterprise networks. Anthropic's Claude Mythos AI model can autonomously discover and exploit vulnerabilities, forcing a rethink of defensive timelines. Here's the full breakdown of today's top security stories. Daily Cybersecurity Brief, 2026-04-14. Next section, Critical Alerts. Adobe Acrobat/Reader Zero Day, CVE 2026-34621, Adobe released emergency patches for a prototype pollution vulnerability exploited in the wild since December 2025. The flaw bypasses sandbox restrictions to execute arbitrary code through specially crafted PDFs. Attacks use malicious JavaScript to read local files via util, read file into stream, and exfiltrate data through RSS. Ad feed. Security researcher Hefei Lai discovered the exploit after someone submitted a sample named Yummy Adobe Exploit UWU PDF to XMON on March 26. Researchers spotted Russian-language documents targeting oil and gas sectors. Adobe initially rated the flaw critical 9.6, but later lowered it to 8.6. Action: update Adobe Acrobat DC to 26.00, 1.21411, Acrobat Reader DC to 26.00, 1.21411, or Acrobat 2024 to 24.00, 1.30362. Windows, or 24.00, 1.30360. Mac OS. Use Help Check for updates. Open suspicious PDFs in sandboxed environments only. Sources: Bleeping Computer Dark reading the Hacker News. Cisco FMC zero-day exploited by Interlock Ransomware. CVE 2026-20131, Interlock Ransomware Group, actively exploited a zero-day in Cisco's Secure Firewall Management Center software to execute arbitrary Java code as root without authentication. Amazon Threat Intelligence published analysis on March 18, 2026, detailing the campaign. The vulnerability allowed attackers to compromise enterprise networks, deploy custom remote access Trojans, and facilitate ransomware operations. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added this to KEV, Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog with April 22 remediation deadline. EPSS, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, scores 0.8, 74th percentile. Action: patch Cisco Secure Firewall Management Center immediately. Check for indicators of compromise including unexpected Java processes, new user accounts, or custom RAT deployment. Federal agencies must remediate by April 27, 2026. Source: Recorded Future. CISA KEV Editions, 7 vulnerabilities, April 27 deadline. CISA added 7 actively exploited vulnerabilities requiring federal agency remediation by April 27. The list includes CVE 2012-1854, Microsoft VBA Insecure Library Loading, patched 14 years ago but still under active exploitation. Microsoft Exchange Server Deserialization, linked to Storm 1175 deploying Medusa ransomware. Fortinet 40 Client EMS SQL Injection, CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, 9.1, exploited since March 24, 2026. Adobe Acrobat Use After Free, EPSS 0.504, 98th percentile. Windows CLFS Out of Bounds Read, Windows link following privilege escalation, and 5 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Action: prioritize patching these 7 CVEs immediately. Update Microsoft Exchange Server, Windows, multiple components, Adobe Acrobat, and Fortinet 40 Client EMS. Check for ransomware indicators if Exchange Server is an environment. Sources: CISA The Register The Hacker News. Next section, Ransomware Claims, Last 48H. No structured ransomware victim claims data available in today's collection. Next section, Ransomware and Extortion. Silent Ransom Group targeting law firms. Silent Ransom Group, SRG, has compromised 38 U.S. law firms according to leak site listings, representing only firms that refuse to pay. SRG claims most targeted law firms do pay, suggesting 76+ total attacks. Recent victims include Wood Smith Henning and Berman LLP, WSHB, a California firm with $81 million revenue. SRG gained access February 20, 2026, acquired 3.6 gigabytes of data, and demanded $1.8 million. Negotiations failed when the firm questioned the valuation relative to data volume. SRG follows consistent negotiation strategy, calling firms despite requests not to, waiting for firms to make first reasonable offer before lowering demands. FBI issued private industry notice in May 2025 warning about SRG's law firm targeting campaign. Action: law firms should review FBI's May 2025 notice. Implement network segmentation to limit data exposure. Document retention policies should minimize sensitive client data storage. Plan incident response procedures including negotiation protocols. Neither Jones Day, ORIC, nor WSHB successfully negotiated by waiting for SRG to lower demands first. Source: data breaches. Net. Medusa ransomware via Exchange vulnerabilities Storm 1175 threat group exploits CVE 2023-21529. Exchange server deserialization, plus 15 other vulnerabilities to gain initial access, steal data, and deploy Medusa ransomware in extortion attacks. Microsoft threat hunters warned of this activity last week. The group is financially motivated and targets organizations for data theft before ransomware deployment. Action: patch Exchange server immediately. Review Exchange logs for indicators of deserialization exploitation attempts. Implement multi-layered authentication and network segmentation to limit lateral movement post-compromise. Sources: The Register, The Hacker News. Next section, IOCs and Detection. No structured IOC, indicator of compromise, data available in today's collection. Next section, Business and Infrastructure Threats. Rockstar Games data breach via Anodot/Snowflake Shiny Hunters extortion gang leaked 78.6 million records stolen from Rockstar Games via compromised Snowflake environments. Threat actors obtained authentication tokens during an Anodot security incident and used them to access customer data in connected Snowflake, S3, and Amazon Kinesis instances. Leaked data includes internal analytics for Grand Theft Auto Online and Red Dead Online, in-game revenue, purchase metrics, player behavior tracking, game economy data, and customer support analytics from Zendesk. File listings reference fraud detection systems and anti-cheat model testing. Snowflake confirmed unusual activity affecting a small number of customer accounts tied to a third-party integration and locked down affected accounts. Action: if using Anodot for data anomaly detection, review Snowflake, S3, and Kinesis access logs for unauthorized activity. Rotate authentication tokens. Verify Anodot integration permissions follow least privilege. Review SAW integration security architecture for token storage and access controls. Source: Bleeping Computer. Wolf SSL certificate verification, flaw CVE 2026-5194. Critical vulnerability in Wolf SSL SSL/TLS library allows improper verification of hash algorithm size when checking EXA signatures. Attackers can force devices to accept forged certificates for malicious servers or connections. Flaw affects EXA/ECC, DSA, MLDSA, ED 25519, and ED 448 signature algorithms. Wolf SSL is embedded in over 5 billion applications and devices including EOT devices, industrial control systems, routers, appliances, automotive systems, and aerospace/military equipment. Discovered by Nicholas Carlini of Anthropic. Patched in Wolf SSL version 5.9.1, released April 8. Action: update to Wolf SSL 5.9.1 immediately. For embedded systems or vendor firmware using Wolf SSL, check for downstream vendor advisories. Identify all devices and applications using Wolf SSL in your environment. Red Hat Advisory confirms MariaDB not affected as it uses OpenSSL. Source: Bleeping Computer. OpenAI certificate rotation. After Axios supply chain attack, OpenAI is rotating Mac OS code signing certificates after a GitHub Actions workflow executed malicious Axios package version 1.14.1 on March 31, 2026. The workflow had access to certificates used to sign ChatGPT Desktop, Codex, Codex CLI, and Atlas. While no evidence indicates certificate compromise, OpenAI is treating it as potentially compromised. North Korean threat actors, UNC 1069, conducted social engineering via fake web conferences to compromise an Axios maintainer's account and publish malicious packages to NPM. The malicious package installed a remote access Trojan on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. Older app versions will stop working May 8, 2026. OpenAI worked with Apple to prevent future software notarization using the old certificate. Action: update all OpenAI Mac OS apps to versions signed with new certificate before May 8. Review GitHub Actions workflows for dependency management security. Verify NPM package integrity before use. Train developers on supply chain social engineering tactics, including fake collaboration setups and fake conference calls. Source: Bleeping Computer. Storm Infostealer. Server-side decryption model new Infostealer, Storm, launched early 2026 for under $1,000/month, represents a tactical shift in credential theft. Storm harvests browser credentials, session cookies, and crypto wallets, then ships encrypted files to attackers' server for decryption instead of decrypting locally. This bypasses endpoint security tools that detect local browser database access, handles both Chromium and Gecko-based browsers, Firefox, WaterFox, Pale Moon, server-side. Automates session hijacking, feed in a Google refresh token and geographically matched SOC 5 proxy, and the panel restores the victim's authenticated session. Cookie Restore makes MFA, multi-factor authentication, irrelevant, granting persistent access to Microsoft 365 and SaaS platforms without passwords. One compromised employee browser hands operators authenticated access to SaaS platforms, internal tools, and cloud environments. Operators connect their own VPS to Storm's central servers, routing stolen data through infrastructure they control, insulating central servers from takedown attempts. Action: implement session token binding and device authentication beyond username/password. Deploy user and entity behavior analytics, UBA, to detect anomalous session restoration patterns. Monitor for credential access from unexpected geolocations or devices. Enforce periodic session token rotation. Review Azure Entra ID, formerly Azure Active Directory, conditional access policies for session hijacking protections. Source: Bleeping Computer. Linux Foundation social engineering via fake Slack account attackers impersonated a real Linux Foundation official via Slack, targeting developers in To-Do, Talk Openly, Develop Openly, and CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, projects. Phishing link hosted on Google Sites, google.com/view/workspacebusiness/join, imitates Google Workspace sign-in, prompting credential entry and installation of fake root certificate masquerading as a Google certificate. On Mac OS, the fake certificate downloads and executes a binary GAPI from 2.26.97.61. On Windows, it prompts installation of malicious certificate via browser trust dialog. Installing the certificate enables interception of encrypted traffic and credential theft. The binary execution results in full system compromise. Google's security team took down the spoofed pages. Google confirmed legitimate Google Workspace authentication never requires manual root certificate installation or binary download. Action: if developers received Slack messages from Linux Foundation officials with Workspace Business Google Sites links, disconnect from network, remove newly installed certificates, revoke active sessions/tokens, and rotate all credentials. Verify all requests from authority figures through secondary communication channels. Train developers on social engineering targeting developer workflows and trust relationships. Legitimate services never require manual root certificate installation. Source: The Register. Next section, General Security News. Anthropic's Claude Mythos. AI-powered vulnerability discovery. Anthropic restricted public release of Claude Mythos preview AI model due to cyber attack capabilities, launching Project Glasswing to scan public domain and proprietary software. The model autonomously discovers vulnerabilities at scale and writes effective exploits without human involvement. In testing, Mythos solved 73% of expert-level capture the flag problems, previous LLMs, 0%. In cyber range tests against 32-step attack playbooks on corporate networks, Mythos completed an average of 24 of 32 steps in successful runs, older models, maximum 16. UK AC testing found Mythos at least capable of autonomously taking down smaller, weakly defended enterprise networks. Security company IOL replicated vulnerabilities using older, cheaper, public models, but exploiting vulnerabilities requires more sophistication than just finding them. Joint CSA/SANS/OWASP report warns organizations, likely to be overwhelmed, by threat actors using AI to find and exploit vulnerabilities faster than defenders can patch. The cost and capability floor for exploit discovery is dropping, time between disclosure and weaponization is compressing toward zero, and nation-state capabilities are becoming broadly accessible. Action: prepare for zero-day exploits becoming commodity threats. Prioritize defense-in-depth strategies beyond patching, network segmentation, least privilege access, behavioral analytics, and assume breach architectures. Accelerate patch deployment cadence. Implement compensating controls where patching is not possible. Review vulnerability management program to account for compressed disclosure weaponization timelines. Sources: Schneier on Security Cyberscoop, The Hacker News. JaneLaRAT malware targets Latin American Bank's modified version of BXRAT, called JaneLaRAT, recorded 14,739 attacks in Brazil and 11,695 in Mexico during 2025. Targets banks and financial institutions in Latin America using phishing emails disguised as invoices. Attack chain downloads ZIP archives containing Visual Basic Scripts or MSI installers, deploying DLL, Dynamic Link Library, sideloading to install the Trojan. The malware uses custom title bar detection to identify desired banking websites in victims' browsers. Capabilities include financial and cryptocurrency data theft, mouse tracking, keystroke logging, screenshots, and system metadata collection. Since May 2024, campaigns shifted from VBS to MSI installers. JaneLaRAT also installs malicious Chromium-based browser extensions to gather cookies, browsing history, and tab metadata. Upon execution, malware establishes TCP socket communications with command and control server and monitors victim activity to intercept banking interactions. When detecting targeted financial institution windows, it waits 12 seconds before executing commands including screenshot capture, fake overlay display impersonating bank dialogues, keystroke capture, cursor manipulation, force shutdown, and PowerShell command execution. Action: financial institutions in Latin America should hunt for DLL sideloading indicators, malicious browser extensions, and Chromium launch parameter modifications. Load extension flag. Monitor for processes establishing unexpected TCP socket connections. Implement application whitelisting to prevent unauthorized DLL loading. Review browser extension deployment policies. Source: The Hacker News. Show doc remote code execution flaw, CVE 2025-0520. Actively exploited critical vulnerability, CVSS 9.4, in Show doc document management service exploited in the wild for the first time. Unrestricted file upload flaw from improper file extension validation allows unauthenticated attackers to upload PHP files and achieve remote code execution. Patched in Show doc version 2.8.7, October 2020. Current version is 3.8.1. Vuln check observed exploit leveraging the flaw to drop web shell on US-based honeypot. Over 2,000 instances of Show doc online, most located in China. Example of threat actors increasingly exploiting end-day vulnerabilities regardless of install base. Action: if running Show doc, update to version 3.8.1 immediately. Search web server logs for unusual file uploads to Show doc directories. Hunt for web shells in Show doc installation paths. Implement web application firewalls to block unauthorized file uploads. Source: The Hacker News. Insist PHP web shell scans targeting FreePBX SANS Internet Storm Center detected scans for Insist PHP web shell from IP 160.119.76.250, Netherlands. Requests probe for AJAX. PHP with MD5 parameter, a hash indicator. This web shell is a favorite among attackers compromising vulnerable FreePBX systems, first reported by Fortinet in January 2026. The same IP also probes for free PBX vulnerabilities using originate actions to download and execute remote scripts, wget.95.147.178/k. PHP. Successful exploitation installs Insist PHP web shell and adds 10 backdoor accounts: root, HEMA, sugarmate, spamfilter, user, supports, freepsuser, supermate, juba, all using the same password hash, $1.NRZ1CBTK6 DNGS37N. Op PC Jedge UF 9P. Action: free PBX administrators should check for the 10 backdoor accounts listed. Review web server logs for AJAX. PHP requests with MD5 parameters. Update free PBX to latest version. Search for Insist PHP web shell in /admin/modules/phones/directory. Monitor for wget commands downloading remote scripts from 45.95, 147, 178 or similar infrastructure. Source: SANSISC. Next section, patch priority. Adobe Acrobat/Reader, update to latest versions. Critical 0-day, CVE 2026-34621, exploited since December for arbitrary code execution and file theft. Microsoft Exchange Server, patch CVE 2023-21529 immediately. Exploited by Storm 1175 to deploy Medusa ransomware. Cisco Secure Firewall Management Center, patch CVE 2026-20131. 0-day exploited by Interlock Ransomware Group for root code execution. Wolf SSL Library, update to version 5.9.1. Critical flaw CVE 2026-5194 allows forged certificate acceptance across 5 billion devices. Windows multiple components. Patch CVE 2023-36424, CLFS driver, link following, VBA library loading, all actively exploited, and 2 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Next section, vulnerability disclosures. March 2026 CVE, or Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, Landscape. 31 high-impact vulnerabilities recorded. Future identified 31 high-impact vulnerabilities actively exploited in March 2026, 29 with very critical risk score. Affected vendors: Cisco, Microsoft, Google, ConnectWise, Langflow, Citrix, AcquiSecurity, Nginx UI, Qualcomm, F5, Craft CMS, Laravel, Apple, Cinecar, Wing FTP Server, N8N, Omnisa, SolarWinds, Ivanti, Hikvision, Rockwell, Broadcom. Microsoft and Apple accounted for 32% of vulnerabilities. CVE 2017-7921, Hikvision, 9 years old, CISACEV, EPSS 0.942, 100th percentile, demonstrates attackers continue exploiting long-known weaknesses. 9 of 31 vulnerabilities allowed RCE affecting Google, Langflow, Craft CMS, Laravel, Microsoft, N8N, SolarWinds, and Apple. Most common weaknesses: CWE 502, deserialization of untrusted data, and CWE 94, code injection. Darksword iOS full chain exploit enabled Safari RCE, Sandbox Escape, and kernel access, deploying Ghostknife, Ghostsaber, and Ghostblade payloads. Coruna exploit kit compromised iOS devices to deliver Plasma Loader Plasmagrid, malware. Action: review asset inventory for affected products. Prioritize based on observed activity, not just age. Legacy systems require compensating controls where patching is not possible. Implement Nuclei templates created by Recorded Future for CVE 2026-27483, Mines DB Path Traversal, and CVE 2026-27944, Nginx UI Missing Authentication. Source: Recorded Future. Fortinet 40 Client EMS SQL Injection. CVE 2026-21643. CVSS 9.1, SQL injection vulnerability in Fortinet 40 Client EMS allows unauthenticated attackers to execute unauthorized code or commands via crafted HTTP requests. Diffused cyber-detected exploitation attempts since March 24, 2026. EPSS 0.137, 94th percentile. Added to CIS a KEV catalog with April 27 remediation deadline. Action: patch 40 Client EMS immediately. Review logs for SQL injection attempts since March 24. Federal agencies must remediate by April 27. Sources: The Hacker News CISA. Next section, Trends and Context. This week's stories highlight 3 converging trends reshaping defensive timelines. First, the persistence of old vulnerabilities. CVE 2012-1854, 14 years old, and 9 years old remain under active exploitation, proving patching debt compounds risk indefinitely. Second, the collapse of zero-day advantages. Adobe was exploited for 4 months before discovery, and Cisco enabled enterprise ransomware campaigns before public disclosure. Third, AI-powered vulnerability discovery, Claude Mythos, compresses the timeline between disclosure and weaponization toward zero, forcing defenders to prepare for commodity zero days. Organizations can no longer rely on multi-week patching cycles or assume 0 days require nation-state resources, and 3 additional CVEs. See show notes for the full list. Generated 2026 0414 sources, 40 articles from 28+ security feeds, and 3 API sources that concludes today's cyber threat brief. From Carolina, Clear Tech. Stay patched, stay vigilant.